Hello, and welcome to the Emerging Consciousness Global Online Festival, a kaleidoscope of voices and perspectives on awakening. Here we're gathering with leading transformative coaches, cultural creatives, visionary artists, an eclectic mix of wisdom keepers, all to create a catalyzing space where curious people come for fearless and experiential learning. So thank you for being a part of this transpersonal movement to liberate minds and supercharge consciousness and activate the farthest reaches of our human potential so that we can create a more peaceful and evolved world. My name is Tami Mensh. I'm a transformative life and spiritual business coach, creator and host of this event, and founder of Kaleidoscope Lounge and Coaching. I serve people on a journey to fullness of expression, joy, authenticity, and deep wisdom. Those brave souls who sense that change is imminent and long to connect with what makes them feel more fully alive. And that's what this event is all about. And one of the most transpersonal ways to receive messages from our unconscious mind and allow it to emerge into the consciousness is through our dreams. So I'm super excited to be speaking today with dream analyst Tayria Ward. Hi.
Tammy, it's so nice to meet you, and I'm happy to be speaking to those who are called to join you in this great festival. I'm excited about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm just going to tell everyone a little bit about you. Tayria has a private practice offering dream analysis, depth psychology, and spiritual mentorship to individuals from all over the world. She's worked intensively on her own and other people's dreams for more than 40 years, and for nearly 20 has been an avid student of Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Tayria also conducts a monthly global online dream symposium, and where people all over the world share messages about their dreams. And she conducts retreats and vision quests and teaches online courses. So you have a lot to share here and a lot of years of studying dreams and depth psychology.
I do a lot of years and a lot of passion for it. So definitely, yes.
Fantastic. So I know our topic today is breaking the spells of denial, allowing the consciousness to emerge. And before we get into that, I'm just really curious about what drew you to this work.
My dream work specifically, and
Yeah,
yeah,
depth psychology and dream work. Yeah.
yes. Well, I had been a minister for about 20 years in an interfaith kind of community. And the woman who founded that community and was our spiritual teacher for a long time before she died, she had each of us writing down our dreams every day. And so at the age of 24, I began writing down my dreams. And everybody I knew in our little community, we all wrote down our dreams. So we were consistently talking about our dreams. And it seemed to be a very alive and very fascinating and very life-altering topic to be consistently engaged with. We were forever in our conversations talking about a dream we'd had and how it contributed to whatever was going on in our life or each other's lives when it would give perspective. It was so 20 years up the road, fast forward, and I decided that I needed to move on from the institution that I was a part of. I felt like my time there was complete, and that I needed to do other things. So the thing I ended up doing was getting a doctorate in depth psychology because of Freud and Jung's interest in dreams. I just thought, I want to take this part of everything that we're doing and really move it. I want to understand it scientifically. I'd always had different perspectives from the spiritual communities. I mean, in all the spiritual traditions, dreams are consistently important in all the scriptures and everything. But I liked these guys that had a scientific perspective. And so I enjoyed very much the years that I was working on my doctorate in depth psychology. Jung's work is very important and very I think he's a visionary of the last century that his voice needs to be louder and louder. So because he just was so important, his thinking and his breakthroughs. So I then, when I got my doctorate, started doing retreats. I know what I wanted to tell you also. I got my doctoral work was around indigenous ways of knowing and being. I got very interested in working with indigenous elders, and all of them, the dream to them is the dream time is part of how they think about the world, waking and sleeping. And dreams are very important. And they get up in the morning and they talk about their dreams with the community. They enact the dreams of the shamans of the community. I mean, it's very important. So that was part of the dreaming, and part of my interest was getting back to the ways of knowing of indigenous people. So after all that was said and done, I started a retreat center where we worked on the reawakening the indigenous mind and the ways of knowing, and we worked our dreams. And so I've been doing that in various formats ever since. I sold the retreat center, and now I'm just a private dream analyst and teaching courses in dreams. So.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what's coming up for me, I want to ask you is, what's you talked about your dreams with your friends in the morning, and it was a big part of your day, and the way that what you focused on and made them, walked around in them and explored them together. And what was there any huge major insight that you had through a dream that stuck with you, that transformed you through your life?
Oh, I would say consistently, they're consistently transformational. Oh, gee, if I were to go back through my catalog, what one stands out? Did you want me to tell a dream? Is that what you mean?
I was just
Yeah.
curious, if what message, so for me, I shared that my company is called Kaleidoscope Lounge and Coaching, and Kaleidoscope came to me in a dream.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And a whole method of going from chaos to clarity with the phases, and the whole thing was just, I woke up and I said, Eureka, I got it, and then continue to work with it, and it's growing, it's becoming more and more meaningful for me over time. And I didn't know if there was something that for you could pinpoint that has changed you dramatically from a dream.
Yes, yes, and there are several of those stories, but you inspire me to just tell this one. When I came to North Carolina, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I came here. I was living in LA, I'd been there for 30 years, raised my family there, and that's where the ministry was, and that's where my work was. I had two different jobs in a graduate school and in a college, and I was very well settled there. And I came to North Carolina for a conference, and I was stunned by how these mountains just got under my skin. It was like powerful. It was so, I felt like I was home or something. I had a really stunning attraction to this land. And then when I got back to LA, I started having dreams of the mountains, one after another, and all these weaving symbols that would show up, a mountain shaped like an eagle, and then the eagle showing up. And that it was like all the different ways that the symbols wove together that I knew were calling me to the mountains. That was a big decision. I was just finishing my doctoral work, and I had these jobs, and I, raised my family there. And the idea of moving to the mountains of North Carolina was a huge decision, but the dreams made it so that it was really kind of a no-brainer. It was like, one of my friends said, and I thought it was a good comment. She said, I would be more afraid for you if you didn't follow those dreams than if you did. She said they were really commanding kind of dreams that, that made it very clear that this is where I needed to be. And then I lived out in the middle of the wilderness in the mountains for 8 years all alone. And that was, in terms of deepening into the indigenous mind and the dreaming of nature, that was, it was a significant sort of rite of passage for me to be there. So yeah, it
That's
was
beautiful. I know
huge.
that's
And the
huge.
dreams were the only thing that gave me the courage to do it, really. If I hadn't had the dreams, I don't know if I would have had the courage.
What did you keep dreaming about the mountains after when
Oh,
you?
yeah, ever since. Yeah, they're dreaming me now. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Oh, there's so much I want to unpack with you in that, but I also want to ask probably the most common question that
Uh-huh,
you get
uh-huh.
is we know there's so much that our dreams are messages that are in our dreams. What about for the people that say, I never remember my dreams? What advice do you give them or tell them?
I hear that a lot, and there's a couple of ways to, that I respond to that. One is, if you decide that your dreams are important, it's like some people just don't remember them because they've kind of grown up in a place where they weren't ever discussed, they weren't talked about. It's a marginalized part of the psyche that nobody thinks about. But if you decide that you really want to go through the process of understanding your dreams and what they're about, um, you make an intention. And when you go to bed at night, take a little pad. I use a little pad like this and a pen, and I have them right next to myself in my bed room. Um, and look at your pad before you're going to sleep, and tell your dreaming mind, I really want to remember my dreams. And then if you wake up with a dream, you can reach over even in the dark and just write down a couple of keywords from the dream that will help you remember in the morning what it was about. I don't recommend waking yourself up and turning on a light. Nobody wants to do that, and sleep's too precious, but you can do that. Or if you get up and go to the bathroom, or when you get up in the morning, just write down a few notes about the dream. Um, and and when you wake up in the morning, often we wake up with dreams, but our mind just goes straight to putting our feet on the floor and the next thing we got to do. And so if you can train yourself to just stay still in your bed and listen to where you just were, like turn your eyes back to where you just were instead of forward to what you're going to do next, and stay in that dreaming state for a little bit of time if you can, and get it back. So those are kind of exercises. It's like a muscle that has been got atrophied, basically. So you have to kind of build the muscle, and trust and respect absolutely everything that comes, no matter how bizarre it seems. There is a meaning, and there's a message in it for you. So whether you get it or don't get it, just keep trusting it, keep writing it down. I recommend keeping a little dream journal. Keep yourself a nice little, I have all my journals here. Keep a nice little journal, put your dreams in a nice journal, because then they know they're being respected, and it kind of helps the relationship. It is a relationship with the dreaming side of your mind. So that's one thing. And another thing is, life is a dream. Everything we're going about in life doing, this is the dream. And they say God is dreaming us, and the universe we're the dream of the universe, just walking on this earth. And it's all a dream that we're in. The reality, basically, ironically, is when we go to sleep, that's when we see the real world. It's like the waking world often is the dream. So just look at your waking world. When I work with people, I work with the waking events of their life as a dream. So just acknowledge, what is dream like about what's happening to me here? Why do I keep getting this kind of scenario just occurring in my life? Or what are these synchronicities that are happening in my waking life? What is the dream of this? And so you can just start awakening your dreaming mind by interpreting your waking life as the dream that it actually is. It's all part of the dreaming psyche. It's an aspect of our psyche that's alive and awake and aware and well all the time, whether we're tuning into it or not. So it's a matter of tuning in.
Yeah, I know that sometimes in the middle of the night I'll know that I'm dreaming, and I'll say, "Oh, I'll remember it." I'll remember that. This is so important. I know I'll remember it.
Yeah.
And then I wake up, and I know that switch that you're talking about, where it's like automatically my mind switches into the present, like I can almost feel it happening, where I'm letting that's gone, and it just evaporates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying 45 years later, I've been working on my dreams very consistently, and it still is a trick that I have to that my mind plays that that wasn't anything, just get up and go do your thing. But yeah, so we consistently have to to make the effort to keep it with us,
Yeah.
and then I'm always grateful. So yeah.
What are some ways that you help you said you have your clients, uh, talk, work with their waking life as if it's their dream life. What are some ways that you help people to better understand their dreams and work with their dreams?
You mean in the waking life? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know. Like that, or what are some ways that you help people to make sense, to receive these messages, to know their meaning?
Oh, to know the meaning of the dreams in the waking and sleeping. I see. Well, you kind of follow the thread. So, a waking kind of dream-like event might be you hear a song that just comes across and something in you is stirred, and so kind of ask yourself what that is. Often we get those stirrings and we don't pay any attention to it. We just go on. But if you pay attention to it, what was just stirred, and then so often I have these things all the time, and I think everybody does. It awakens something in you, and then you'll walk down the street and you'll see a little sign in a bookstore or something, and it's got something about that thing that was just stirred in you, and then a friend will call you and have that thing, and you kind of, it's like following the little breadcrumbs of how life hooks things together, that's leading you in a way that's very dreamlike, but that has a very significant kind of message for you that may be revealing, it may be bringing up something, I don't know, maybe some interesting memory from a childhood sweetheart that you've never really solved that mystery of what happened, and maybe some things start coming, and you can, now that you're more adult, you can awaken your memories and sort it out, and so heal yourself, or um, resolve something, some impression that maybe you got about yourself or life at the time that needs review. And so the psyche is giving you these incidents so that you will awaken to that and you can resolve them. It's always a healing impulse from the deep soul and the deep psyche that's giving you all that. So you just follow it.
Hmm.
So, it's a matter of paying attention to the symbols and really asking yourself what those symbols mean. Like in a dream, if it's just some, uh, seemingly bizarre, like Jung said, he used the example of somebody had a dream of a bottle cap on a sidewalk. That was the dream. They saw the bottle cap. Jung started asking him all the questions, this analysand, all these questions, and the whole story of the person's life came out of that, that dream. It's like there's nothing that won't tell you, if you start pulling the string on it, that won't tell you your whole life. So don't think of it as bizarre, meaningless. It's there for a reason. The psyche, as Robert Johnson, great depth psychologist and author, says, God wouldn't waste your time with irrelevant information. So your psyche is not, not giving you something for nothing. It's giving you something.
It's not just like these just random fragments.
Right. Yeah, people like to say that's what dreams are, just fragments of your day that your psyche's just getting rid of like trash. I don't accept that. I don't believe that. No,
Yeah.
that's not my experience or observation about it. So
So even if you don't remember your dreams, are they still helping you?
yes, that's a really good question, Tammy. That's a really good question. I would say yes, definitely. They're still helping us. But as Carl Jung says, the purpose of human life is to make the unconscious conscious. So really, our purpose is to make those things conscious, is to get to wake up with it, and then actually create the endeavor, make the effort to work with what's being communicated. Because otherwise it's just running like software in the unconscious. And sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not. It could be an old program in your psyche that's telling you you're really worthless. There's no point in making an effort to be anything else, because some messages you got in your childhood, would defy your efforts. And so, it's like, it can be a really destructive program that's going on in your unconscious if you don't make it conscious and work with those messages and try to understand where they came from and how to resolve the effort with effort, what they're telling you, then it's just running like software. It's just running your life. It's running you instead of you being the agent that runs it.
So it is still helping you if you're not remembering it and you're not, bringing it into the unconscious into the conscious. It is still helping you.
Yes, absolutely. And
And
the more you can make it conscious,
mhm.
the better off you're going to be.
Yeah,
So it's both. It's definitely both.
yeah,
Yeah.
I see.
Hmm.
So I want to ask you, what made you choose our topic for today, the breaking the spells of denial, allowing the consciousness to emerge? Did that come from a
Where
dream?
did that come from? Sort of the dream of life. Yes, yes, definitely. I read your beautiful introduction for what you're accomplishing here. I mean, what you're, the conversation you're opening here, and the idea of emerging consciousness. I've just been observing quite a bit lately in our collective society, in the U.S. and in all parts of the world, this topic of the human tendency to be in the state of denial, and the power that denial is. It's like a spell that's over us, where we just don't see any contradictory information to um, what the spell is, what we've decided is so, or what we want to be so, or what we um, think. Thought is something that runs us until we start running it, just like I was saying about the dream. It's quantum physicist David Bohm says that thought just runs us unless we decide to wake up to what the nature of thought is, and we can run it and choose the thoughts we decide to think. And so denial, I think, is when thought is just running us. And I've had experiences with denial in my own life I can talk about a little bit, but I'm just seeing it in the collective psyche that it's like, if we want consciousness to emerge, this is the spell that needs to be broken, this spell of denial.
Say more. What does denial mean to you when you speak about denial?
Okay. So I just dreamed up about two or three um, what do I want to say, stories in my own life about how I came to understand really the nature of denial and what it does. So the first one that comes to mind is when, excuse me, in my doctoral work, when I first started studying the indigenous ways of knowing, suddenly it's like I began to realize that Western civilization, what we have done, that I never, I was just under the spell of Western civilization and how great it is. But then when I started to really think, it's like somewhere in the history, I'm in my doctoral work there. So I'd had plenty of education, but nobody in all those years of education had really helped me to see and understand that when we came to this, when, our forebears came to this continent and decided it's ours now. Columbus put down his flag and said, shall be ours. That the original peoples had been here for thousands of years. And somehow that story was left out of all the, their story and that story, and the audacity and absurdity of what we did was left out. And I felt lied to. I was just upset. And then thinking about slavery in the same way. We knew it was in the history books and Abraham Lincoln, basically. That's all we knew, basically, in the 1960s and 70s when I was getting my education mostly. It was never mentioned, the absolute utter cruelty of it. I mean, we knew it was bad, but it just wasn't talked about. So I started waking up and I felt like I'd been under a spell, the spell of Western civilization, basically. And I'd been in denial all this time. And I saw people in denial that, I had people argue with me when I just started to have the conversations. I remember one of my cousins, it's like, he said, well, we put them in a nice little place, we let them have their spot, like on a nice little reservation, and educated their children in our ways instead of their own, let them be educated in their own ways. But he thought he couldn't even accept that there was anything to be second guessed about all that. So that to me was like a cultural denial that we're in. And somehow, the history writers just want to cast the spell that we're not going to talk about this in that way. So that was one way. And I remember learning that the Native Americans, when the white man came here, said that they owned the land, that they could own land, and they were like, "You can own land, like
nobody owns the land, right?
Nobody owns land. The land owns itself, Like you can own sky or you can own the ocean. No, nobody owns this." And we're like, "Well, yes, you do." And they just cast the spell, of we're going to own it and we'll let you own this. And it was so contrary. So these are spells that we all live under. This is sort of a denial that we're in, that we just haven't broken yet to, various degrees. Okay, and then another one, I was on a vision quest, a 10-day vision quest. And all of a sudden, the tree that I was questing under, after about third or fourth day that I was there, said something to me, came into my psyche the way you hear somebody say something in a dream. Very clearly, it said something to me and it wanted me to do something for it. It was very specific. And then I looked all around and found what it needed for me to do that was something that had happened to it. It was uncomfortable. I can help it. And that was just like, okay, plants, trees, the other than human world can communicate directly with us. And nobody had ever told me that. Nobody had ever told me that. And I'm thinking, what is the spell that got cast over so that we could make just the resource out of the land, so that we could just cut it all down, excavate it all up, do whatever we wanted. You can't think of it as a living relationship that you have with this. So, because of the, progress, whatever, what you want to call it, the Industrial Revolution, all of it. So that was denial. So now I'm still struggling to break out of that spell of denial so that I can be in more coherent, consistent connection. It's my intention to be able to do that. But that was a spell broken at that time. And then the other one that comes to mind is a kind of a sad, very more than a very sad story. But I found out that my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, much adored, and my dearest friend, had been lying to me for a few years. And when somebody came and finally decided I needed to know what was going on, there was a lie that was being told to me on a daily basis. And I consider myself kind of psychic, I thought I was pretty intuitive. And I thought I would know that if that were true. I absolutely 100% didn't believe it. And it took days and days for them to get through to me, with different evidentiary, facts to finally get through to me that this is what had happened. And when I found out, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. It was like I just went into a total whiteout. It was just broke the spell completely of my denial. And then the process, this is why I bring it up, is the process in the next year or two, or actually even still now, this is 20 years later, of unpacking how it was right under my nose, right in front of my face. Like I'm a smartish person and I wasn't seeing what was right there to see. And so you unpack all these conversations, all these events, all these things, and you're like, why wasn't I seeing it? That was the most personal really denial that I ever, or lesson in denial that I have ever learned, is that it's right there. There is no reason that I shouldn't have been seeing it, except for I didn't want to. I guess that would be the thing, or I wasn't inclined to distrust people that I trusted, or whatever it was. So it's like, okay, so this is a serious problem that we all need to identify, that there are things in our lives, all these ways, collectively and personally, that we are under some kind of spell of denial, and that for consciousness to arise, we have to go through the process of breaking that spell. And Marie-Louise Lanfrance, who is a great Jungian author, she says, redemption is the process of breaking a spell or a curse. That's when we're redeemed. It's when you break that spell or that curse.
Those are such powerful examples that you gave.
Right. And it's just to know that it happens. Right.
Yeah, and I really want to thank you for you sharing those with us,
Oh,
because those were big, huge, learnings, and I mean, painful and profound.
yeah.
Um, and so, thank you, because they're such great examples of the way that we are asleep and we don't even know, and putting it in the context of denial.
Uh-huh.
I get that now. I'm understanding that connection.
Right.
Um, and with the I'd love to hear a little bit more about denial and how people experience it, and how do we break it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that needs to be our collective sort of question to live. I think the healing of anything like this is to ask the right questions, so um, I wish I had a magical solution for how to, that I could offer, or a step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of offering for how to really get through these walls of illusion and denial that we're behind. But I think the first thing to do is to recognize that it happens, and that it's very likely that it's happening to us, and to see, when we observe it in others, that whatever compassionate way we're called to, you know helping people. I mean, it's a very delicate thing, because it's very painful to have it's a whole reality that you're living in this spell that you're under. So it can be very painful. So it has to be a delicate situation where, we can't just blah, you're in denial. We have to, like, urge ourselves and each other through the process of awakening. It's a delicate process. But so I think that, denial is like a strategy that the psyche develops to keep you from knowing painful things, and to keep you sort of in your comfortable realm. So it can mean that you're willing to go through the discomfort and the uncertainty, and sort of trust that consciousness is worth it. That there is a good reason to wake up from this spell casting. One of the good examples of denial that we all collectively live, at least mostly in the Western world, but often in the other parts of the world as well, very much, is the spell of consumerism. That you have to have this thing, you have to have this thing, you have to have more things, you have to have these things. And all of us have a little bit of a different taste or idea of what those things are, but consumerism is definitely a spell that's come over us, and this idea of progress and endless growth economy and that sort of thing is just something that has to be overcome. I remember Brian Swim, who's a scientist that I really admire. I remember reading his thing for my dissertation, so that would have been back in the 1990s. And he was saying that before a child enters first grade, they've listened to I forget the exact number, but something like 50,000 ads.
Hmm.
And that, that they are so brainwashed and steeped in this culture of consumerism that we don't even recognize what we're doing to the children. And that was that long ago. Now there's social media and every other way that the ads are coming all these ways, and you've got to have that thing. I remember once listening to a commercial on the television that was about Arby's, beef sandwiches or something. And I remember after the commercial was over, my mind saying, okay, next time I'm in town, I'm going to get one of those Arby's sandwiches. And I thought, where did that come from? I don't eat that stuff. I never eat fast food. It was almost like I could feel the spell come over me, and that unthinkingly, I was just going to drive up and get one of those sandwiches. It was like, that was really a revelation moment, that I understood that I think advertising is spell casting. It's casting spells, and we don't recognize it. Sometimes the advertisers do, to some extent. But this is I know that I remember in grade school, my daughter, there was a girl that came into the school, and she just cast a spell over everybody. Who was cool, who wasn't. Everybody had to worship her. If they didn't, they were not going to be cool. It was like this whole sociometry of that situation was completely reorganized when this one person stepped in and just cast a spell over the whole crowd. And she had that sort of, unconscious power. I'm sure she wasn't necessarily conscious of it, but she could do it. And I think that those are things that we have to be alert to. I feel like in the United States, there are people in this country who are just under a spell, and they don't even know it. They cannot see it. All of us are, in our own ways, in our own bubbles. Exactly. So I won't cast it outside myself either. But, it's like waking up to the spell that has been cast. And I know I read an article recently of QAnon followers, their children saying they lost their parents. They just saw their whole individuality unravel. All of a sudden, they're thinking thoughts they'd never thought before, saying things they'd never thought before. One of my clients said her mother said something that was very racist, and she said, Mother, you were never a racist. What are you doing? She said, I know, they taught me that. It's like she was being taught racism in this particular media bubble that she was in. So, and she was proud of it. She's learning new things. So these are spells being cast, and what do we do? And this is partly why I think this is really a good moment in time for all of us. If we want this emerging consciousness to arise, is to understand how this works, how this functions, and ask ourselves every day how to be more awake and more aware. And the dreams are going to be our basic tool for that.
These spells are great examples of living, waking dreams, like you were talking about there, and to think about spells in ways that you let people, get into your consciousness, that allow them in, that you don't realize that these messages have gotten in there.
Right. No, we have no idea. It's very unconscious the way all this works.
And
So
so
how do we make it conscious?
are there it makes me want to ask, are there positive spells? I mean, like love, and
Absolutely.
positivity. Would you call those positive spells? Are they still called spells?
Yes, I think that's a really good question. I love that. Yes. And if we look at the fairy tales, they say that the fairy tales basically are foundational psychological stories. All those stories are deeply true in the human psyche, and there's spell casting in all the fairy tales, basically. And a lot of times you have the good fairies casting the good spells. And I actually, at the last Dream Symposium, there was a little 9-year-old girl that came onto the Dream Symposium, and her mother, they live in Portugal, her mother brought her on because she was fascinated and has great dreams. She told me a dream. It's interesting. I was going to do this today, and this was just last Friday. She told me a dream, this little 9-year-old, of girl that came into her school and cast a spell to love this little boy. And she said it was a little boy who was very ugly and nobody wanted to pay any attention to him. And I said, well, how did you feel about the girl? What was the girl like in the dream that cast the spell? Because I think she was thinking it was a wrong thing. But she said she had this blue hair. And I think blue is the color of the divine feminine, of mother, you know. She said she had this blue hair and actually her energy was really nice. And I said, well, I think she was helping everybody to understand that you can love this little guy that that nobody wanted to be with, and sort of making sure that was happening. So that was, that was a dream of a little 9-year-old in Portugal, that just came in last week of spell casting, so she was understanding that this kind of thing happens. And that in that instance, I said, I think it was a good spell, it was like, and so it's for us to keep our moral compass so that we know a good spell from a bad spell. And so that we follow our moral compass, our own conscience, our own heart, so that we know when spells are being cast, whether we can work to break that power or whether we're willing to allow ourselves to be moved by the energy of that. So yes, I think that, there are in the fairy tales, which I think means that they're true in our psychological life as well. So yes. Uh-huh.
I just and how is there a way that we can look at ourselves as some kind of I know that coaching helps you do this and give you different frame of reference and mirroring, and is there a way that we can see the spells that we are under on our own and wake ourselves up?
I think so often, all of us, I'm sure it's universal, find ourselves doing things that we have no idea why we're doing, or drawn to things that we have no idea why we're drawn to it. And often that's an impulse that it's our gut instinct that is to be really followed and respected. But sometimes it's just like, a very mundane example is that cookie in the cabinet over there that you don't need, you don't want, and you're under a spell and you're going to go get it. And that's an addiction and it's in the brain and it's a sugar thing, whatever. You can give it all kinds of things, but there are ways that we behave in those kinds of ways that we know are against our value system even, and so I think when we catch ourselves in those things, to just try to shake ourself awake a little bit and say, what spell am I under? Doesn't mean that you're going to break the spell right away, but you start asking the questions and maybe you will break the spell right away. But I think it's a way to work how the unconscious is driving us in these certain ways, and how to just name it. I'm sure quantum physics would have a name for this. It's different from a spell, but it would be the same thing. And depth psychology, the same, psychological complex would be, there's other ways to name and describe these things. But I think there's something about the energy of a spell that even is more transpersonal than some of the things. And so, in all these ways, it's to wake up to um, where we are in alignment with the highest good for ourselves and all beings, and just allow ourselves to live our truth in a deeper way and catch ourselves when we're not.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's a really good way to kind of put it all together, Yeah, yeah, that's really beautiful. And I love the examples that you shared. They really show us how many different ways these can be affecting us in our living, in our wake and our sleeping dream states.
Right, exactly. So nobody should ever really say that they don't dream, because they're living a dream. We're all living a dream. So don't think of yourself as not a dreamer if you don't remember your dreams in the night. You can start remembering them probably more if you make an effort, but if you don't, the dream work is still yours to be done and had. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to learn more about, your dream symposiums and your courses and work with you, I invite you to tell people how they can find you.
Okay, well, I have a website, tayriaward.com, Tayria. I'm sure you have it there.
Yep.
And so you can go on my website. There's a Dream Symposium page. Every month, Jocelyn Mercado and I conduct a Dream Symposium, 2 hours. It's every month on a Friday, so you'll find the dates there. And you're welcome. You're invited to come to the Dream Symposium and listen to people's dreams and bring your own dreams. And it's a way to get into the dreaming mind of the community. And this is the way Indigenous people, as I was saying, conduct their lives, listening to the dreams of the community, and they have guidance for us collectively. And so they are consistently very powerful events. And so everyone is welcome. You're all invited to come. And so you'll find that information on my website, tayriaward.com, on the Dream Symposium page. And then also there's a resources page there that has lots of interviews and lectures that I've given about dreams and about, some of these other subjects that relate to the dreams, basically. And so, though you're welcome to explore, other topics that I've spoken about there too. So, and then
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, and my phone number and my email address are on that website too. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say I'll be there.
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, good.
I like the idea of tapping into the collective to see where the threads are and what are we dreaming as a people, and what that to me is really, really intriguing to me. So I'll be at your next one. That sounds great.
Oh, good. Yeah. And so I encourage people who are interested to register on the Dream site, and then you'll get the dates. Nothing comes through the registering unless the dates and the recordings of them. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tayria, for the time and the wisdom that you shared with us today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we continue to have many, many more.
Yeah, I love this, Tami. Thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for inviting me to be with you. It's just an utter delight, truly.
Same for me. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.